Welcome to the SAP HANA Academy. My name's Bob, and in this series of videos we'll be looking at SAP Leonardo Internet of Things. In this video series we'll be looking at using the MQTT protocol with Gateway Cloud. And in this video, which is the third of a series of 4 videos, we'll be looking at setting up an MQTT client, and we'll be setting up PAHO. In the previous couple of videos we looked at an introduction into the IoT service cockpit, then we looked at creating device data models and also device and sensor onboarding. What we actually built was a device, here you can see here, which is essentially a soil data, and this device has 2 capabilities. So once we connect this up to our client, you can imagine we've got a soil sensor or a soil device. And if I go to my capabilities, this is measuring both moisture and the pH level of soil. That's what we can imagine our device will do. As you can see here, we've called it our GH soil device. We also looked at security in that we looked at how we deal with security when connecting from a client or the physical device, and we do that via a P12 certificate, which you can access here. So we've generated that is in our downloads folder here, and we've got the associated key with that certificate as well. So the next step is to configure a client to simulate sending data to our IoT service. So we'll send data from a device simulator that of course supports MQTT protocol. And again, we're going to send this data. It will be received by Internet of Things Gateway Cloud, which is our gateway, which we can see here. If I go to my device, if I go back to my device and scroll up, you can see here that we're connecting to the MQTT gateway, as you can see here. And we're going to use a client called PAHO, which is an MQTT client. So just to show you, if I do a search, if you want to see how to install it, it's actually available freely on the web. It's called Eclipse PAHO, and basically it gives you the ability to have a Windows tool that will obviously be installed on a Windows box, so that will then you can send data to your MQTT device in our IoT service. So I've already installed it. It's not actually a big install, it takes a few seconds. So I've got it on this machine, so if I go and launch it, I've got it listed on the right hand side in my shortcuts. So on the right hand side I'll select PAHO. It'll take a few seconds to launch, and this is what that PAHO MQTT client looks like. So what we need to do first is connect to our IoT service. Once we've connected to the IoT service or the device, then we can start to send data on it, or we can simulate sending data via this client. This is just to make sure that the security works, the device works, and of course we understand the flow of data to our IoT service. So we'll build ourselves a new connection. We don't need to give it a name, I'm just leaving it as connection 1. And then essentially, as you can imagine, we need to configure connect, make sure that the connection works, and then we can choose to send data. So in terms of the server that we're connecting to, this will have to be the host name of our server, or where our IoT service is. So what we need to do is go back to our browser, and it's essentially this part of the URL here. This is actually the server name. This is the instance, which is the second part of the URL. And again, you can see that here, that this is the instance ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the server name of my URL, including the CP IoT SAP. I'll copy that, and then what I'll do is I'll go back to the client and I'll just replace localhost here with that, like so, making sure you keep those forward slashes. We'll also need to change the port number. At the moment it's 1883. We're going to have to change this to 8883, like so. Again, making sure you've got that colon just before the port. So if I go back, we'll have TCP : / the server name : 8883. The last thing we need to do is change the protocol. We're not using TCP, we're using SSL, so I'll just change that as well. So in terms of the client ID, what we're actually doing is connecting to the alternate or alternative ID of our device. So again, we can get that if we go back to our device. This is the name of the device. You have the ID. We're not getting the ID, although in this example it's the same as the alternate ID. Make sure you select that alternate ID. They may be different. So I'm going to select or copy the alternate ID, go back to the client, and I'll just paste that instead of that client's ID. Again, I'll make sure by going back, we copy, it ends with 2A2, and we'll paste it here like so. So now to deal with security. So we're going to go to our options. And firstly, we're using SSL, so we need to enable SSL. You'll see that these options appear. And then what we'll need to do is specify our SSL settings for our key store location and also our trust store location and the various passwords. So our key store location is essentially where our certificate is. So I'm going to be really lazy. I've left it in the downloads folder. I'm actually going to leave it there. It would be a good idea, of course, to move it to somewhere more stable. From the drop down, I can select P12 because it's the certificate that we're using. So we know we created a P12 certificate, so I'll select it. Then, of course, we need to also include the password. So this is that key store password that we saved before. So I'm going to copy that from my notepad and I'll paste it here as the key store password. So you can see this basically is the public key and let's say a private key. Not too many people are going to know what this password is. So what we also need to do is change our trust store location. So to do that, what we need to do is go to our JRE, which is also installed as a prerequisite for PAHO on this Windows machine. So if I browse, I'm going to go to the following location. So for me, it's in C, Program Files. In the Java folder, we've got our JRE. You need to install this before you install PAHO. And then I'm going to go to the lib folder. And in Security, this is the folder that we need to specify. So we need to specify a specific file. So if I click on the drop down and select all, we actually need to select the CA certs file as well. So once I've done that, I can click on open and it specifies that as the trust store location. Now we haven't actually set up a password, but the client needs a password. So I'm just going to type change it as my trust store password. So it's just because by the default, we need to have a trust store password when we specify our trust store location. So once you've done that, we've actually configured the security part. We're using the certificate. We've put the password. We should now be able to connect to our IoT service. So at the moment, as you can see, we've disconnected, we've not connected. If I click on connect, what we're waiting for is the message that we've connected. And as you can see here, we've got the time that we also connected at as well. So once we've done this, once we've connected and there's no error messages, what we want to do now, of course, is send some data. And we'll look at how to do that in the next video.